We've reached section 32, clarifying the sins of the tongue. The longest chapters under the sins are the sins of the tongue, the sins of the hands, and the sins of the body in general, which is the longest one of them all. Among the sins of the tongue are backbiting, i.e., to mention something true about your Muslim brother or sister in their absence. Whether the subject of the negative gossip is old or young, deceased or alive, provided that if they heard such statements, they would be discontent. Okay, so I like the way that's worded, except here, this word negative. Yani, when it's going to be forbidden backbiting, when the person you're talking about doesn't like what you're saying. So maybe that's the meaning of negative. He doesn't like it. Whether the negative gossip is old or young, deceased or alive, Muslim. There's no ghiba for a kafir, meaning it's not haram. That's correct rule. Hence, an expression is judged as gossip if the absentee does not like it. If the true and unfavorable statement was mentioned about them. Yeah, that's right. True and unfavorable. So maybe that's what negative means there. But you can see the difference, potential difference between those two. True and unfavorable, okay, that's really the rule there. This is clear. This word negative, I wouldn't suggest using that to explain the rule. It's true and he doesn't like it. If the absentee does not like it, if the true and unfavorable statement were mentioned about them, whether it concerns their body, lineage, manners, disposition, or anything else having to do with them. He says, so if you just don't want someone to talk about your affairs in general, but it's not necessarily negative, is it ghiba? Because you don't like for your business to be spoken about, positive or not. Yeah, that's a good question. Shaykh said, and when it comes to the business, when someone says such as, this business is more expensive than that one, or this business has higher quality than that one, that this is not ghiba. Yani, there's some scenarios that if you know them, maybe it helps you to narrow down exactly what's haram. For the most part, it's clear what is the haram. But maybe sometimes some things you might say about a Muslim might slip you that you're committing ghiba. That's why I'm concerned about the word negative here. Rather, if it's true what you're saying, and what you're saying they don't like for you to say it, then that's haram, unless you have an excuse. So that could be such as saying he's short. So maybe in some cultures, to say someone is short is a normal thing to say. No one maybe thinks or feels that it is offensive. Or he's tall. Same thing. Yani, I'm saying that to you because I learned religion and then these are examples we learned. He's short or he's tall. Oh, subhanAllah. Some things maybe are clearer, like say he's smelly, he stinks, he's etc. But according to some of the examples we took, doesn't have to be so severe. What's going to help you to stay away from this sin here is, I think, to put yourself in that person's shoes. And then you think, oh, would I like this to be said? Maybe you wouldn't. So then don't say it. Yes. It says, you know how some children will complain about their parents telling their friends about their life and the child doesn't accept. Does this count as ghiba? It could. Depends on what they said. Could be. Have to be so careful when you talk about these things, brothers and sisters. This ghiba is going to slip right out your mouth. Not just that, but there's people who don't do ghiba, but if somebody was doing ghiba, they won't tell them to stop also. So we need to be mindful on both fronts. You're welcome. So it says here, if a person says something about a Muslim that is not true, then it is considered slander. The way I said it a few minutes ago in the other document was defamation, buhtan. We seek refuge with Allah from that. Slander is more severe than backbiting because it has lie in it. The ghiba is true. Buhtan is a lie. So some cases for you here, if you were in your own privacy and you spoke and said, Fulan is stupid, or Fulan smells funny, then this is not ghiba. And also, uh, if you mention someone to another who doesn't know that one, then that's not ghiba. Also, if you mention a big group, a big group in a way that you're not pointing out anyone in particular, and yani, someone from that group is not present and harmed by what you're saying, that's not ghiba, or it's not haram. Yes. If a person were in his privacy and he said, if he thought or said, he thought to himself or said, Fulan is such and such a bad thing. It's not ghiba. It's not ghiba. It's not ghiba, is what I mean here. It's not ghiba. Or if he speaks about someone to another who doesn't know that one, then it's not ghiba, or it's not haram. It's not haram. And if you mentioned a big group without calling out someone in particular from that big group, and not a small group, not like one house, not like a family in a house, that's a small group, a big group, and you, you're not talking about a person in particular, and no one from that group is harmed by what you're saying, then that's not haram. Like someone might say, the Fulan family are they killers. The Fulan family are killers. Maybe it's a very big family. And Shaykh has plenty of details there in the Bughya. Insha'Allah ta'ala, maybe we will get to it sooner or later. May Allah enable us. May Allah grant us many more years of good deeds, of teaching and learning. Amin. May Allah make the knowledge of the religion amongst our pleasure in the dunya. Amin. And there's excuses for the ghiba too. You said provided that they're a big family and no one of them is harmed. Yes, that's right. If you want to look into the Bughya and see Shaykh's ibarah there, and then that's the al-ibarah al-madbuta, what Shaykh said in the Bughya there. Ibarah madbuta means that precise wording. If you want to look and see how the Shaykh worded it in the Bughya. Let me see. Maybe I can see right now. See what the Shaykh said here. Bismillah. Let me stop right here. It says, it's not ghiba to say this one is more expensive than Fulan. Or Fulan's merchandise is better than Fulan's. Or so-and-so's trip to Hajj is better than so-and-so's trip. Like those who conduct the trip. Or to say, Fulan has more knowledge than Fulan. So Shaykh saying all of this is not riba because the regard is given to, I really like to translate this as common sense. Al-Tab'u Salim. The regard is given to the common sense. But maybe translates as natural, sound nature. Sound nature. Though Tab'i Salim. Normal people is basically what Sheikh's saying. The regard is given here to the normal people. He says right here, and likewise, it's not forbidden riba. So that means not, he's not saying it's not riba, he's saying it's not forbidden. It's not forbidden riba to speak about a big group who are not limited. Like to say, the so-and-so family have such and such quality. And none of them were present in the session, such that he would be harmed by that. But if one of them were in the session, and then that were said, and then it were said in front of him, your family is disgusting, then this is forbidden because this harms him. This is harmful to him. As for to say something like that about some known limited people whose persons are identified, to say some dispraise, talk about them, which that is forbidden riba. And as for saying about a person behind his back what he doesn't like without mentioning his name and without those who are hearing knowing him, without those who are hearing knowing who's intended, then this is not haram. And just like it's haram to commit the ghiba, it's haram to be silent about it. So that part too. Yani, this sin is something that we need to work on. And a lot of Muslims, they do fall into ghiba. And a lot of Muslims who don't fall into ghiba, they do fall into not silencing the one who falls into ghiba. So there are a lot of Muslims who don't commit ghiba too. MashaAllah. May Allah have mercy on them. May Allah make us amongst them. Ameen. But then if they don't, so it looks like it's going to take a special one to be one who doesn't do the ghiba and he stops it too if it happens. May Allah make us amongst them. Ameen. He said, may I translate again the one about the audience that didn't know? Yeah, Shaykh says, as for talking about a person behind his back, saying about a person behind his back what he does not like, without mentioning his name, and without those who are hearing knowing who's intended, then this is not forbidden. And then here the Shaykh started talking about the excuses for ghiba, which means then it's going to be a permissible ghiba, or even an obligatory ghiba. But I don't want to go that far. I want to stick to the book. And the book we're going over doesn't go into that detail. So then the author says, tale-bearing, that is to relay someone's statements to others in order to stir up trouble. Such as going to Zayd and telling him that Amr said such and such about you. And telling him, you can remove that here. And telling him, Amr said such and such about you. And then like put quotation marks here, comma inside quotation marks. Then going to Amr and telling him, and just be comma here too. Zayd said such and such about you, with the intention of stirring up trouble between them. So that's haram. That's clear. To incite conflict, to be an instigator, i.e. to cause trouble between two individuals by urging sinful acts to be committed, even if this were done without relaying words between them. Rather, by gesturing with the hand, for example. Like you use your hand saying like, you gonna take that? Such an act is sinful even if it is between animals, as some people do between dogs, roosters, or rams. And they make the animals fight. However, if this is done between pigs, it is not unlawful. To lie, i.e., to say something contrary to reality, while knowing that what one is saying is not the truth, that's where the sin comes in. while knowing that what one is saying is not the truth. As for his not knowing if what he said is the truth, or not knowing that what he said is not the truth, as for not knowing that what he said is not the truth, is not knowing that what he said is not the truth, it's not necessarily a sin. Depends on what it is. It is sinful whether one is serious or joking, and it's going to be a big sin or a small sin. Lying is not a big sin uh, always. For example, some insignificant lie that doesn't harm anyone is not going to be a major sin. And then some other lie is going to be a major sin. It's more significant lie. A figure of speech is not a lie. Saying something that's not taken literally, that's not a lie. To solemnly swear by Allah or by an attribute of Allah to something that is a lie, and swear to a lie, to say wallahi, and you're lying. To utter expressions of sexual defamation, qadhf. Qadhf means in Arabic language throwing. By accusing a person of adultery, fornication, or sodomy. That means to say, you fornicator, you adulterer, you sodomite. Yani, throwing a person into zina, or throwing a person into liwat, which is sodomy, meaning accusing them of that. These expressions are numerous and sum up every expression that ascribes fornication or what is similar to a person or an individual among their relatives, yani to a person or any of his relatives. Or if you want, you could put the word any expression that ascribes fornication or what is similar to a person. What is similar means sodomy, to a person or an individual among their relatives, yani to some person or his relatives, such as his mother or his sister. Like just calling a Muslim a bastard is calling his mother an adulteress or a fornicating woman. So that's qadhf. It's not a condition that you believe what you're saying for it to be qadhf. Hence, they are regarded as sexual defamation directed towards the victim, unconditionally when they are said explicitly, such as their mother, yani that person's mother or sister. So if you called a Muslim a bastard, for example, then you're calling his mother an adulteress or a fornicating woman, because bastard means born out of wedlock. And just like we said in some previous lessons, remember these religious rules in so many cases. It's not your intention that matters. What matters is that you actually did what's called that thing. If you do what's called that thing, then you're going to have fallen into it, or you're going to be a committer of that. So you're insulting a Muslim and you call him a bastard, then that's another sin. That's some sin that you didn't even intend. Probably you're going to have it. Then you're going to come on Judgment Day just to find that sin there, the sin of qadhf in your book of deeds. Where'd that come from? You're going to be so surprised, mashallah. Hence, such statements, are regarded as sexual defamation directed towards the victim, yani the one who's being accused of this, unconditionally when they are said explicitly. Yani when such statements are said explicitly, then there's no condition. Just like the rules of blasphemy. If you said explicit blasphemy, then you committed blasphemy. Yani, unless you didn't know what the words meant, for example. Just like marriage and divorce, if you did a marriage contract, even if you were pretending and acting, if all the conditions are fulfilled, it's valid. Or if a man pronounced a divorce, he said to his wife, "You're divorced," and he was only pretending. She's divorced actually. So unconditionally when they are said explicitly, just like other rules in the religion. This means when the expression of sexual defamation is explicit, such as saying this person is an adulterer or a sodomizer, comma inside quotation marks, the defamer is charged with this sin unconditionally. Yani, he's charged with that sin of qadhf or rami, throwing, which means here accusing, i.e., whether or not the qadhf was intended. Even if the person didn't intend that, yani, that meaning in particular, that wasn't what he wanted. Maybe he only wanted merely to insult him without that meaning, that extra meaning that we're talking about now. If the defamer's statement was not explicit, then it only amounts to qadhf if said with that intention, i.e., with the intention of sexual defamation. Excuse me. The expression is implicit if it bears the meaning of qadhf and other meanings, just like we learned in the rules of blasphemy, just like we learned in the rules of divorce, such as saying you lecher or you wretch or the like. Hence, when they are said explicitly, whether or not one intends sexual defamation or implicitly while intending an accusation of qadhf, then those people who said that are punished. Yani, if there were a caliph and the rules were being enacted properly, this sin makes a person get punished. The punishment for the defamer who is free and not a parent of the one he's defaming is 80 lashes. The parent won't be lashed though. If it were the parent, it's still haram, but the parent won't be lashed. A slave receives half of this, which is 40 lashes. The author says to curse all the companions, yani to insult all of the companions, which is blasphemy, because insulting all of the companions is an attack on the religion. As for insulting one of them, it is considered an enormous sin that is a pious one among them, such as insulting Abu Bakr or Umar. Saying about Muawiyah and his group that they were transgressors is not considered among the sinful insults or disparaging of the companions. That's very well documented, actually. Some people talk wrongly about this issue. They talk as if no one talked about this. They talk as if the students of Shaykh Abdullah are the only ones. They emerge now, 1400 years later, saying something about the issue of Muawiyah. This is unheard of. And of course, they know that that's not the case. They are gaslighters. Because this issue was explicitly mentioned by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the mutawatir hadith, وَيْحَ عَمَّارٍ تَقْتُلُهُ الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ, related by Al-Bukhari. This hadith means, my sympathies for Ammar, the transgressing group. It says transgressive. It says, the transgressive group will kill him. I never saw that word before. يعني حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. This issue is a very good example of something that demonstrates when a person has a hawa. The hawa is the desire in the self, the inclination, that is. Not just desire, not just like desire to eat a chocolate cake or something. The hawa is the inclination to what is not good, especially wrong beliefs. Because here is a mutawatir authentic hadith. وَيْحَ عَمَّارٍ تَقْتُلُهُ الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. What was Ammar? The transgressing group shall kill him. Now imagine if you were at the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam when he made this prophecy. And so he told about the future. So what did they understand from this hadith? Do you think the Sahaba understood from this hadith that Ammar will be killed by a righteous group of people? Ammar shall be killed by a justified group. Ammar will be killed by a group of people whose honor must be preserved in what they have done in killing him. So there's no way he understood anything like that. And do you think they understood from this hadith that this prophecy of the Prophet, we should not speak about it? We should not talk about what the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, concerning some people who shall kill Ammar. Because all of what I just supposed to you is what people today do with this hadith, yani, as if, uh, yani, as if it's a normal thing. Like their approach to this hadith as if it's something normal. And then if you don't approach the hadith like they do, then they act like uh, you're a criminal. So, وَيْحَ عَمَّارٍ تَقْتُلُهُ الْفِئَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. Woe is Ammar, the transgressing group shall kill him. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave this prophecy while Ammar was a young man. And this hadith spread amongst the Sahaba, and they all knew it. And ever since the Prophet said this hadith, they were waiting to see who's going to kill Ammar. And they believed, just like the Prophet said, that whoever killed him is unjust, transgressing. So who that turned out to be? Turned out to be the army of Muawiyah. So when some people didn't want to say something against Muawiyah, they said because he's a companion. And then they didn't want to say something against Muawiyah because of this, then drove them to dance around this hadith as much as they could, and drove them to ignore the documentations about this issue as much as they could. And because they were also haters of the followers of Shaykh Abdullah, who say what they say about this hadith and this incident, then they used that to disparage the Shaykh and his followers as much as they could, as if no one ever spoke about this issue before. So I don't want to go much further there, but we're able to, mashallah. If you have a question, go ahead and ask. The author said to give false testimony. Yeah, but let me make sure something's clear before I move on. So what we're saying is, because what's the topic here? What's the Shaykh saying? Insulting the companions, that's a sin of the tongue. So what we're saying here is that if someone, for clarifying the religious rule, and not for taking shots at anyone's honor, not for the goal of taking shots at Muawiyah's honor, but for the goal of clarifying religious judgments, says that this transgressing group refers to Muawiyah and his army, and therefore what they did was impermissible. This is not a sin of the tongue called insulting the companions. That doesn't fall under the sin of insulting the companions. The author said to give false testimony. Yes. Question. He said, may you repeat that last judgment regarding insulting the companions? I said, if someone mentions this hadith and says, therefore, those who killed Ammar, the army that killed Ammar, they were unjust. And that's the army of Muawiyah. And then, so that means, so Muawiyah is also included in the dispraise of this hadith. And he did that for clarifying religious rules, not for taking shots at Muawiyah's honor. This is not a sin of insulting the companions. The author said to give false testimony, which means for someone to testify about a matter while lying. To testify about a matter, yani, to give testimony about a matter, yani, to be a witness while lying. And this is among, yani, one of the enormous sins. To put off paying a due debt, yani, to procrastinate, to delay, pay, paying a due debt. So there's maybe better words than put off. To procrastinate or to delay paying a due debt after the lender asked for the payment. After the lender asked for the payment, despite being self-sufficient and able to pay. Period. Or semicolon. Yes, so it says here, to put off paying a due debt after the lender asks for the payment. So when is the debt due? The debt's going to be due either at the time that you agreed about it, or if you didn't agree when it's due, then when the loaner asks for it and you have it, if he asks for it and you have it, then you need to pay him. That's if you didn't agree to any particular time when it should be paid. And if you agreed to a time when it should be paid, then it's due at that time. And if you have the money, then you're obligated to pay. Not paying while able to pay is a sin. But not paying without being able to pay is not a sin. Yani, you don't have the money and now your debt is due. So you're unable to pay. There's no sin here. So then what do if you're the one who's owed the money and the person doesn't have the money? There's nothing you can do but give him time. And that's all. That's an obligation too. You can't do anything but give him a grace period. So that means you can't fine him and you can't harass him. You can't call somebody on him. You can't give him interest for paying late, etc. All you can do, you have no choice but to give him a grace period. So that's obligatory. Yeah, you can forgive the debt. That's an option if you wanted to. Then the author says to cuss a Muslim unjustly. So in all these cases, I suggest putting insult instead of cuss and curse. To insult a Muslim unjustly, like to call him a donkey. And calling him a donkey, especially in our days, is something very light. Some Muslims are not paying attention to this sin. To insult the Muslim, they will call the Muslim all sorts of things. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. You want somebody to take some of your good deeds on Judgment Day? Or do you want to take somebody's bad deeds on Judgment Day? Then the author says to ask Allah to damn someone unrightfully. Yani, to damn someone unrightfully. Like, even if you don't put the word to ask Allah, if you don't put that part here, so if you just say to damn someone unrightfully, then that's a sin of the tongue. Such as to say to a Muslim, may Allah damn you. Being damned means to be kept away from goodness. Yani, being damned means being cursed. That's why I would suggest don't say to curse the Muslim, because it means to damn him. Say to insult the Muslim. That means something else. And that's a suggestion I have for you. Being damned means to be kept away from goodness. That is, being damned or cursed means to be banished from God's mercy. To mock a Muslim, i.e., to degrade him, or to say anything that harms him unrightfully. You're very important here. Mocking him, that includes mocking his behaviors, mocking how he walks, mocking how he talks, mocking how he laughs. or to say anything that harms him unrightfully. That's very broad there. So you need to be mindful. People, they don't mind to say things that hurt the Muslim's feelings. And they would say, I'd say it to him. I'll say it to him in his face. Yani, they'll talk about him behind his back. If you told him, you can't say that, that's ghiba. They'll say, I'll say it to him in his face. Because they don't mind to hurt the Muslim's feelings. Some people's like, they don't love the Muslims. Some Muslims, I mean. Some Muslims, it's as if they don't love the Muslims. Because when someone loves the Muslims, then he wants to help them and protect them and assist them and to advance them, not to harm them, tear them down, ruin them, etc. To lie about Allah or to lie about His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In some cases, doing this is blasphemy. We seek refuge with Allah from it. For example, falsely claiming that Allah or His Prophet forbade something while knowing it is permissible, that's blasphemy. That's a blasphemous lie on God or His Messenger to say, Allah legalized this, or Allah illegalized this, or His Messenger, while that's a lie. So that's a blasphemous lie on Allah and His Messenger. But an example of a lie that's not blasphemy is like to say, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and then he lies without legalizing or illegalizing something in the lie. Then that's haram, major sin. Question: to say things like you dummy or you're stupid or similar statements to another Muslim are also sinful. All of those are insults and hurtful. But the parent might have some leeway here. So we'll check and ask about what leeway the parent might have. But other than the parent, then needs to, one should refrain from these things. To make a false claim, for example, by suing another person unrightfully while relying on a false testimony, that's a major sin. You have to be careful about suing. A lot of times not permissible. Like if you purchased a meal and then you found something in your meal, let's say a piece of glass or a piece of metal. That doesn't mean now you could take the person to the court and like take thousands and thousands of dollars from him. That's from the kuffar. That's not from our religion. But a lot of times, because a person is used to the way things go in some society he lives in, then the lines get blurred for the person. He doesn't see the difference between religious rules and the customs of the people. So then he'll be a Muslim and maybe he might slip and say, oh, no, I'll get paid now. I slipped and fell. Now I'm going to sue them into oblivion. To issue an uncanonical divorce, I would say improper. To issue an improper divorce, which is the divorce that takes place during menses or during an interval of purity in which he had sexual intercourse with his wife. All right. So, important case here. Inshallah, you already know it. So, if a man wanted to divorce his wife, then there's some things he needs to take into consideration. Is she a menstruating woman or not? If she is a menstruating woman means she has menstruated at least once in her life and has yet to reach the age of menopause. Take that definition, write it down if you need to. A menstruating woman is a woman who has menstruated at least once in her life and has yet to reach the age of menopause. So if his wife is in this category, then he wanted to divorce her, then how does he have to do that? If she is actively menstruating, he has to wait. Divorcing her while she's menstruating is improper. Improper divorce, or according to the way it's translated here, an uncanonical divorce. Yani, it's against the canon. So let's paint a scenario here. So this man is married to this menstruating woman. He wants to divorce her. So if she's menstruating, he has to say to himself, I cannot divorce her now. Actually, let me back up even more. He wants to divorce his wife. She's not menstruating, but since the last time she menstruated, they had sexual intercourse. So since the last time she menstruated, they had sexual intercourse. Now he wants to divorce her. So he has to say, I can't divorce her now because I had intercourse with her during this non-menstruating time between her periods. Now I have to wait. So then her period comes on. And then he says, now she's menstruating. I still have to wait. So then her period goes off. So now he says, okay, now her period is off and I have not had sexual intercourse with her. If I want to divorce her, then I need to do it without having intercourse with her and before her next period comes back on. If I do have intercourse with her, I'm going to have to wait again. And if I wait for her period to come back on, I'm just going to have to wait again. So this is the right way to divorce her. The right way, the Sunni way, yani the way, the prophetic way. The prophetic way to divorce her, and this doesn't mean recommended here. Prophetic way here does not mean recommended. It means the way that's in compliance with the Sunnah. The prophetic way to divorce her is to divorce her in a non-menstruating time that did not have any sexual intercourse. As for other than a menstruating woman, then divorcing her at any time is permissible, even if she's pregnant. Any question? Okay. And really quick, if a woman is pregnant, that doesn't mean she can't get married. That's a digression for you. Pregnancy does not prevent a woman from getting married. In the case of a non-menstruating woman? In the case of a pregnant woman. I thought that her iddah was until she delivered. That's something else. If she has an iddah, implies that she was married. So I'm not saying married, I'm just saying pregnant. Okay. And zihar. So this word zihar, it's the name of a sin. It's the name of an action or a statement. It's the name of a kind of statement. It comes from the word zahr. Zahr. Zahr means back, the back. Like you have a back and you have a stomach. So the opposite of your stomach and your chest is your zahr, your back. So there's a sin called zihar, which is to say to one's wife, you are to me like my mother's belly, or my mother's hand, or my mother's back. Yani originally it would be, you are to me like my mother's back. You are to me like the back of my mother. Meaning, I will not have sexual intercourse with you, just like I don't have sexual intercourse with my mother. Watch out for contractions here. Avoid contractions in formal speech. And it's not restricted to the mother to be zihar. Any non-marriageable or ineligible woman. So if he said, you are to me like my sister, or the back of my sister, or you are to me like the hand of my daughter, or anything like that, anything. Like you are to me like the foot of my aunt. All of that is zihar. And he means by this statement, just like I wouldn't have intercourse with that relative of mine, I'm not going to have intercourse with you. That's a major sin. It is considered an enormous sin because of the harm that is inflicted on the wife. These are hurtful words. And also, it's a lie. That's what Allah says in the Quran, that this is a lie. If he does not divorce immediately after saying that, expiation is due on the husband. The expiation is to free a non-defective Muslim male or female slave. Non-defective means clear of any defect that significantly inhibits the ability to work. So non-defective is like able-bodied, healthy slave. Even if it's a baby, although baby can't work, but that's not a defect. And any defect that's not related to the work is not counted here. Like this slave is completely bald and has no eyebrows. That doesn't hinder your ability to free this one for saying something like that to your wife. But if this slave is missing a thumb or has a strong limp, like one of his legs is obviously longer than the other, then this does inhibit work. So this one is not sufficient for freeing to fulfill the expiation. If unable to free a slave, he is obligated to fast 2 consecutive lunar months. The consecutiveness of fasting the 2 months is mandatory. So that's repetition right there. Didn't he just say right here? He is obligated, another word for obligated is mandatory, mandated. He is obligated, mandated, to fast 2 consecutive lunar months. The consecutiveness of fasting the 2 months is mandatory, obligatory. So I'm not sure why the sentence is repeated there like that. Just now, slightly curious to look into the Arabic, see what's there, to see the nature of the repetition there. It says in the Arabic here, وَفِيهِ كَفَّارَةٌ, there is an expiation for it, على الزوج, on the husband. إن لم يطلق بعده, if he didn't divorce after it, بعد الظهار, after this ظهار statement, فورا, immediately. وكفارته هي عتق رقبة عبد أو أمة. His expiation is emancipating a slave, male or female. مؤمنة, believing slave. سليمة عما يخل بالكسب والعمل. A slave that is sound from what prevents earning and work. So I think earning is missing from the translation. What prevents earning? Al-kasb and amal, work or labor. إخلالا بينا, in an obvious way. فإن عجز عن الإعتاق صام شهرين هلالين متتابعين وجوبا. Yeah, that repetition is not in the Arabic. If unable to free a slave, then one fasts 2 consecutive lunar months out of obligation. That's it. So let's go back to the Lucid Word here. So if unable, what it should say here is, if unable, he, take out is obligated right here. Take this part out here. If unable to free a slave, he must fast 2 consecutive lunar months out of obligation. Then you don't need this extra sentence here. The consecutiveness of fasting the 2 months is mandatory. Okay. So if his fasting is interrupted, even for one day, he must start over. Even for one day, even with an excuse, like he just couldn't fast. He had to fast for 2 months. He's trying to fast 2 months, and he just got so sick he can't take it. He has to break his fast. He has an excuse. He's still going to have to start over anyway. Or he's trying to start his 2 months. He didn't calculate well, and then Eid came. Now he has to not fast. So he has to start over. And as you know, a lunar month is either how long? 29 or 30 days. So what if you start in the middle of the month? Then here's the rule. Yani, first let's start easy. If you start at the beginning of the month, then that's easy. If it's a 29-day month, then so be it. If it's 30-day month, then so be it. 29 days, 30 days, let's say from the beginning to the end, whether it was 29, 29, 30, 30, 29, 30, he completed his 2 months, no problem. But what if he started somewhere other than the first day of the month? Then he has to finish that first month. Let's say it was only 29 days. He has to finish that first month, finish the second month, and then how many days he has to make up from the first month? You know the rule. As many as what turns it to 30 days, or as many as what makes it add up to 30 days. Even if that month were 29 days, since he didn't start on the first day, and so he has to go into the third month, right? So he started fasting the first month, but not at the beginning of the month. So that's month one. Then he started fasting the second month, so that's month two. And he still has some days left, so he goes into month three to finish the first month. He has to fast a number of days that makes that first month 30 days, even if it were 29 days in reality. That's the rule. Not just for this, in all those cases. Whenever you have to count like that, that's how it goes. So then you got the answer here. You said he has to finish what's left over from the first month and then he's done. But with this detail I told you. He has to finish what's left over from the first month, as many as what makes it be 30 days, even if that first month were 29 days. So, if his fasting is interrupted even for one day, he must start over. And if unable to fast, he is obligated to feed 60 poor or destitute people 60 muds. The mud is two hands, average size hands, cupped together like a bowl. So I'm going to call it a bowl, or I might call it a mud bowl, just so you can imagine it better. By giving each individual a mud of what qualifies to be given for zakat al-fitr. What says people here doesn't say Muslims. And I'm sure that's how it is in the Arabic too. I'll take a quick look here. Sittina miskinan aw faqira doesn't say Muslim. It just says 60 poor or destitute Muslims. So ask about that so you can be sure. I don't have the answer. By giving each individual a mud, yani a bowl, according to the measurement I told you, of what qualifies to be given for zakat al-fitr. What qualifies to be given for zakat al-fitr? Whatever is applicable to zakat. So it might be raisins, might be dates, might be rice, might be wheat, etc. To recite the Quran wrongly by affecting the meaning or the vowels, even if it does not affect the meaning. Yani, by affecting the meaning or the vowels, even if it does not affect the meaning. Like if he says, Alhamdulillahu, that wouldn't affect the meaning. Every Muslim must recite the Fatiha during prayer correctly. Yeah, and out of the prayer. Every Muslim must recite the Fatiha in and out of the prayer correctly. And every Muslim must recite all of the Quran correctly. How could you recite the Quran with mistakes and not be sinful when you're learning from a teacher? When you're actually sitting in front of the teacher and you're learning and you're making mistakes and the teacher's correcting you, then you don't have any sin in this case. For the person who has enough wealth to satisfy his basic needs or has the ability to earn what he needs by taking up a lawful craft to beg. Meaning, a person has enough money for what he needs, for his basic needs, yet he begs. That's haram. Or he might not have money, but he could go out and make money. He's able to go out and hustle and make some money. And yet he begs, then that's haram. So when it's not haram to beg, when you don't have enough money and you can't go out and earn some money. Like, for example, what if you have master's degree, doctor's degree, awesome resume, everything? You are super qualified for almost anything and you just can't find a job. Then it's not haram to beg because you can't get any money. You can't find money, you can't get money, you don't have money. You're trying to get a job, you can't get one. Yani, and he said, the only thing I can't do is go out in the street and hustle. I don't know how. I can't make any money. Then it wouldn't be haram to beg. But better not to beg. Also, this begging is haram on the wife, amongst others. It's haram on anybody, including the wife. Yani mentioning the wife for drawing your attention to the relationship between the husband and the wife. Because she might say, because he's her husband, can you get me this? Can you get me that? So it's not permissible for her to ask for something in a way that's considered begging. Now, how is that? What makes it like begging? When you ask for more than what a friend requests from a friend. Asking for more than what a friend requests from a friend. What does a friend request from a friend? Like a cookie, a bite, $1, for example, or 50 cents, or something like that. But does a friend say, can I have $500 on the strength? On the strength. It means just give it to me and that's it. So that's haram. So for the wife, then she wouldn't say to her husband, can I have this coat? Can I have these shoes? Etc. Can I have this jewelry? And we're talking about something that's not her right already. If she has a right, then she can ask for her right just like any person who has a right. But if her husband gave her the permission to ask for whatever she wants, or gave any person, if any person gave another person the permission to ask for whatever he wants, then it's permissible. Like if I say to my kids, ask me for whatever you want. I meant it. MashaAllah. Then it's not haram if they ask for whatever they want. That's what came in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. O Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, ask me whatever you want of my money. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he permitted her. He said, Salini ma shi'ti min mali. Ask me whatever you want of my money. So then, if she were to ask him anything she wants, it's not a forbidden begging. To make a vow with the intent of depriving an heir from his share of the inheritance. It is considered an invalid vow. So the vow is, in Arabic, is called nadhr. So the vow is when you say, Lillahi alayya kadha, for the sake of Allah, I bind myself to do such and such as an obligation, meaning this formula, this statement here makes something become an obligation on you when it wasn't an obligation. But it's a condition that this thing is at least rewardable already. It has to be rewardable already. So if you said, Lillahi alayya, I make a vow to fast on such and such day, then you become obligated to fast on that day. Or I make a vow to pray, or I make a vow to wear a turban, or I make a vow to wear a niqab, or anything that's rewardable. I make a vow to give a charity, etc., etc. Then this becomes obligatory on you and you can't get out of it. But in this case, the vow is invalid. To make a vow, so you're binding yourself to something here with the intent of depriving an heir. So it means basically you want to deprive this heir so much that you want to bind yourself to do something so that you do it. Like you make a vow to give a charity in such a way that the heir won't get any of your money for this reason, for this goal. Then it's going to be invalid vow. Does the vow need to be said out loud for it to be valid? Yes, you need to pronounce it with your tongue. To neglect notifying another of a debt one owes, or a deposited object entrusted to them for safekeeping, which is still a debt, or for other similar reasons. A debt which no one knows about apart from them. And due to a deadly illness, the debtor or entrustee is inflicted with, for example, he fears that the trust or debt will not be paid back to its rightful owners. So what we're saying here is you owe someone money and nobody knows. Or you have something that belongs to someone else and no one else knows. And now you're so sick and you're afraid you're going to die. Or something like that. Or something similar to that. Like maybe you're going to relocate. You're going to move to another country, to a whole other side of the world, for example. Something that if you don't take care of this issue, the person's money or right is going to be lost. So then it's obligatory on you to leave a will. And leaving the will doesn't mean that you have to write it out. It's enough to say it to someone. So leaving a will in this case includes saying to a person, I owe Fulan such and such, so that he would know. And then you fulfilled your obligation. And it says, on the other hand, if another person is aware of the debt or trust, whose testimony is accepted by an Islamic judge, and there is no risk that they will withhold knowledge of the aforementioned rights, then additional notification of the said rights is only recommended, not obligatory. So who are you not going to rely on here? You're not going to rely on an heir here, someone in your family whom, if you die, they inherit from you. This is not the one you're going to tell about this debt or trust, because it's feared that this person will withhold his knowledge so that he gets more money when it's time for inheritance distribution. To falsely claim to be the offspring of someone other than one's father. Yes, so this does not mean merely to call someone your father. To merely say, oh, father, to someone, that's not what's intended here. What's intended here is to attribute yourself to other than your father, to make someone believe that that is really your father. Or for a former slave to claim to be liberated by other than his former owner. That's haram. Why? Because this will make the rights be misappropriated. If you claim that that person's your father when that person's not your father, then you might inherit from someone you're not supposed to inherit from. Or someone might inherit from you who's not supposed to inherit from you. Or someone might give you away in marriage who's not supposed to give you away in marriage in such a way that it's not valid because you can't bypass your guardians.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I have a question about that. Say, stepfather introduced the child, said, telling the people, "This is my son, such and such." Is that okay?
Is it okay?
Or should I
I
phrase it?
don't know. I don't know. What I do know is not permissible is to uh, be in a situation where this child would be thought to inherit.
So
That's the
once
most I know. So, for example, let me cut you off real quick. So, for example, here's you said stepchild. That's an example, or I'll give you even another example. A child born out of wedlock. A person had a child out of wedlock and wants to take care of this child who's born out of wedlock. So he says, "My son or daughter," but this person does not inherit. So it's not permissible to leave that situation in such a way that if he passes away, they're going to give that child inheritance. That's what's haram. That's what this most I know here. So he would, for example, it's not merely saying that's my son that is the sin. It's a false impression that leads to a misappropriation of rights. That's the sin.
So if one was to say that, and people would think that this child will inherit from this stepfather, one should tell them no, that's not his son.
So I don't have more details here because not necessarily relevant for every person to know that. So that's where I don't know where the line is drawn.
Okay, all right, I got it.
But somebody's gonna have to know that. You're welcome.
Shaykh,
So, yes.
the last part you mentioned there about someone giving somebody else away improperly in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So would that marriage contract be considered invalid then?
Yes. So going back to the prior question. So what would a person do? He would inform, for example, his executor when he makes his will, and he wasn't surprised, caught by death suddenly. So he makes a will, and he makes sure that someone knows, like his executor. He says, "This one here, he does not inherit." To propose to a woman after the proposal of another Muslim brother to her is accepted. So that means to propose to an engaged Muslimah while you know she's engaged, i.e., for a prospective suitor to propose marriage to a woman to whom another already has, a Muslim man or a non-Muslim subject of Islamic State. A non-Muslim subject of Islamic State. So it means, for example, if there were a caliphate and you were one of the Muslims in this caliphate, and there's also Jews and Christians there in the caliphate. They're living there legally and they have their rights there and they're citizens. And as a Muslim man, you could marry a Christian woman or a Jewish woman. But she's engaged now already. Some Christian man stepped to her, or a Jewish man stepped to her to marry her, and she accepted, and you knew. Then you can't step to her after that. This would be against, this would be infringing on the right of that kafir. So for a prospective suitor to propose marriage to a woman to whom another already has, while knowing the first proposal has been accepted by someone on the woman's side, like she accepts or her father accepts, and her father's acceptance works for her. On the woman's side, whose acceptance is acknowledged, unless the first suitor gives him the permission to propose and cancels his engagement. Yes. Meaning you want to step to her, but she's already engaged. Then what you have to do, you have to go to that brother and you say to him, I want to step to her. What do you think? So he says, go ahead, bro. If she accepts, then you can have her. Or the like. So then it's not haram. Or the first one cancels his engagement. Do you have any question I can answer for you?
Shay, I did have another question. Well, somebody else had a question. It was actually just now. Your father has a new wife, and his new wife had children, and his child playing with the opposite sex, playing around tag or whatever, touching them, but they are mukallaf. Are they allowed to do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the marriage between a man and a woman does not establish any relationship between their children. Their children will stay marriageable.
Gotcha. I knew what I was doing. Thank you, though.
You're welcome. He said taking shots at the honor of some companions like Muawiyah, does it mean the honor of companionship? No, it means the honor of a Muslim. Muawiyah is a Muslim. It's not permissible to take shots at his honor. But it's not haram to mention what happened for clarifying religious judgment. If clarifying what happened if talking about what happened for clarifying religious judgment does itself take some shot at his honor, then this is not haram. Because it's not haram to clarify the religious judgments. If someone claims that you can't mention this story even because it takes a shot at the honor of Fulan, I would say to him, you don't know what you are talking about. Don't you know there's so many Sahaba, so many stories of the Sahaba, and in so many cases, a companion didn't do the right thing, and the story is right there in the hadiths. His name is there, everything. All the whole thing, the whole situation is there. Why only for Muawiyah you make this the rule and not for anything else? What about those companions who skipped the invasion of Tabuk and then the Muslims shunned them? Nobody would talk to them. So that story is known. So why is not haram to mention that story, but it's haram to mention that story? MashaAllah. Any other question? Amin Wafiq. The author said to issue a religious ruling, to give a religious verdict, a fatwa, about something without knowledge in the matter at hand, or without knowledge of, or without knowledge about the matter at hand. So that's clear. That's a major sin, and that's one of the sins by which you would be a cursed individual, giving religious judgments without knowledge. So just say, I don't know. So to issue a religious ruling about something without knowledge of the matter at hand. So instead of saying permissible when you're ignorant or you're guessing, instead of saying obligatory, haram, etc., while you're guessing, just say, I don't know. And then you'll be safe, inshallah. The author says to teach or seek what is religiously considered harmful knowledge, like magic and witchcraft. Those are the same thing. So I think in the Arabic there's only one word there, like sihr, without an Islamically valid reason that allows a person to do so. So to teach or to seek here means learn. So to teach or learn what is religiously considered harmful knowledge, like magic and like philosophy and like astrology, that means fortune telling of all forms, not just astrology, actually fortune telling in all forms. and magic without an Islamically valid reason that allows a person to do so. Like to learn about that to protect the Muslims. But one must not learn magic with the intention to counter it. This is not an Islamically valid reason to learn magic, because the religion has what counters magic without having to practice magic. So it's not permissible to learn magic to counter it. Why is philosophy haram? Because philosophy is it's a craft that is its fundamental is to deem the intellect the authority that has the potential to unravel all problems, all and answer all questions. Philosophy does not depend on wahi, revelation. But people use the word philosophy in a broad sense. I'm not using the word philosophy in as broad a sense as some people would use it. Sometimes people say, uh, they call someone a philosopher because he's an intellectual. You're not a philosopher simply for being an intellectual. And some people call some system, let's say, some system of thinking, some reasoning, a philosophy. They call some system or reasoning, some system of reasoning, they call it a philosophy. So what I mean when I say philosophy to you, the falsafa is a craft which is a sort of a game, a mental game or a mental craft. And it is a way of deliberately thinking unconventionally. And this is harmful. Because of this, then what some people said by employing philosophy, they said nothing really exists. And some people said there's an eternal creation with the eternal creator. And some people said there are eternal reflections of in the upper world of everything that's on the earth. And some of them said you can split a particle forever and ever. And some of them said resurrection by body and soul is impossible. And some of them said God doesn't know everything in detail, he only knows in general. So look, all this bad things here. All that's from falsafa. It will make your mind sick if you practice that. If a person uh, makes his mind accustomed to this, then he will have corrupted thinking. That's not the same as thinking rationally, and I'm avoiding the word logic here. I'm treating the word logic as if it's a philosophical term, so I'm not going to use that word. Thinking rationally is not philosophy. Like just putting facts together, that's not philosophy. Like learning from your experiences and then making decisions that like good decisions, that's not philosophy. Being a mature person who puts things in proper place is not philosophy. Yani, understanding politics is not philosophy. But some philosophers, they talk about politics heavily. And what I learned is that when we call someone a philosopher, this is not merely in reference to a thinker. This is in reference to someone who has some system based on his falsafa, based on his practice of falsafa. And then he's going to go into all sorts of topics because of having some philosophical system. So he's going to talk about politics, he's going to talk about good and bad, and talk about morals, and talk about the afterlife, and talk about theology. And he has his own system. And there are different madhabs of philosophers. They have parties, like people who learn certain things amongst themselves, and they teach it amongst themselves, their own madhab. And they might debate with other philosophers about topics. And throughout all of that, not giving any regard to what came from Allah or a messenger of Allah. What came from Allah or a messenger of Allah has no place in all of what I just described to you for those people. If you bring them the ayah from the Quran, it's not going to be evidence for them. And those are not limited to the Greeks, Greek philosophers or Roman philosophers. Rather, there were philosophers from all cultures. Chinese philosophers, Indian philosophers, Arab philosophers, etc. It's just that those Roman ones are the most famous ones, but they're not the only ones. And people claim that they took their philosophy from Egyptians. Allah knows, though. I don't know if that's true. Any question there? You can follow up if you want with that question. Maybe my answer is not satisfying for you.
So, Shaykh,
Yes.
did we have Muslim scholars who were also considered philosophers, or they don't agree, those two?
Well, what I can say to you is we have in our religion, when I say in our religion, I mean affiliated with our religion, philosophers. There are philosophers affiliated with our religion. You said like Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah took from the philosophers, but my understanding that Ibn Taymiyyah is not here in what I'm telling you. He did take from the philosophers in a case, the case about the eternal creations. Um, but there were some others who were like real philosophers, though. Ibn Taymiyyah, he wouldn't even like for you to claim that he took from the philosophers. So there are some people affiliated with our religion who were actually philosophers. And what level of knowledge did they have? Actual Islamic knowledge as opposed to their philosophical opinions? I don't know. Ibn Sina, some others, Al-Farabi, Ibn Rushd, the grandson. I don't know what level of knowledge actually they had of Islamic knowledge. Rather, what we have is I'm going to use the English word theologians. Our theologians are not philosophers. Someone might think that the theologians are philosophers or Muslim philosophers, but they're not. What are they? They're theologians. They are Sunni theologians, Muslim theologians. What's the difference between them? The difference between them is that the Sunni theologians base everything they say, the real authentic Sunni theologians base everything they say on the Quran and the Sunnah and the consensus in conjunction with the sound mind. So what some people might think, why some people might think this is philosophy coming from those theologians, because of the amount of intellectual evidence and the amount of intellectual arguments that those Sunni theologians produce, and because of the loftiness of their topics. They would say, this sounds like philosophy. Those must be the Muslim philosophers. That must be Islam's version of philosophy. It's not falsafa. Falsafa, philosophy, also is not theology exclusively. It's not theology exclusively. It incorporates theology and more than theology. Rather, falsafa is a way of thinking. So the real philosopher, he's gonna, talk about theology, he's gonna talk about politics, he's gonna talk about manners, like he's gonna talk about morals and other and whatever ideas cross his mind. And then if he's like educated person and he's able to articulate himself, he's gonna appear to be so sophisticated, so like as if he's so intelligent. Do you want to ask more?
No, barakallahu fiqh. That's good. Thank you.
Amin wa fikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
The magic. So they walking like South, what is that? South Street, and they doing magic. You walk past, and how the people be observing the magic and stuff like that. Is that haram?
It's not haram to observe it. And assuming this is real magic, it will be obligatory to hate it in the heart. Because some things just tricks and illusions, like sleight of hand. Some hand tricks, that's not magic, and some things are something else, not magic. Some sorts of illusions. The magic for sure is haram. As for the sleight of hands and those illusions and things, I don't know what's the judgment for them. I don't even really know how to explain them. To judge by other than the law of Allah and the rules of the religion that He revealed to His messenger. This is an enormous sin. So, like we were saying in some previous lessons, you're going to think twice. You're going to think twice before you take a Muslim to those who judge by other than the law of Allah, because you will be participating in a major sin here. Most likely, unless you have an excuse. Excuses we talked about. Like someone has a right of yours, and there's no other way for you to get that right, and you use that non-Muslim system just to get your right, not more, and not to punish a person by other than Islamic rules. Not to take more from that person than the religion allows you because you're able to by way of those, and not to punish someone by other than the Islamic rules. So if you got involved in that, it's going to be major sin. To judge by other than the law of Allah and the rules of the religion that He revealed to His messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also here, he said, oh, you mean like taking someone to court to sue them? For example. That's an example, and it could be another example, like to use some other services, or like some other municipal services to impose things that there's no religious right to impose them. You said, in this case, can anyone even become a lawyer? It's possible for one to become a lawyer. He's going to have to maneuver to avoid haram. I don't know how one could become a judge, though. It's possible, though. It is possible he could become a judge. The scholars spoke about that. When I say I don't know how it's possible he could become a judge, I meant just thinking about, for example, American law or if you're in like UK or something, I don't think you're going to be able to implement Islamic laws and avoid haram things. Just a little bit. Yeah, for a judge, I think it's unavoidable in such countries. For a lawyer, it's possible that a person can become a certified lawyer and then, yeah, work somehow that his work is only halal, like helping the Muslims. Like, for example, someone might work in, this is just a slight example, someone might work in taxes, but that's to help the Muslims so that they, for example, would even pay their taxes and not be harmed and pay less taxes when they're able to. So he has a way to maneuver so that he doesn't commit a sin in this treacherous arena here. This gladiator death trap here. It says, however, such a person falls into kufr if he rejects the law of Allah or considers it equal to or less than the un-Islamic pronouncement. I think that's clear. If you have a question, go ahead and ask. Amin. Amin wa fikum. To wail, which means loudly eulogizing the deceased and enumerating his good qualities, such as to say, Wa kahfa. There's a line under this A here. Wa kahfa, or two A's, like right here. Wa jabala. So, according to their system, two A's here. Or, ya sanadi. Or to lament, i.e., to scream voluntarily in a way that reflects panic and impatience upon the death of a person. Question, go ahead.
Yeah, Sheikh, the last case you just mentioned, where they mention, you can just kind of scroll up, sorry.
Oh, you said if I could scroll up? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Right there. You said if they reject the law of Allah or consider it equal or less than, is that the same as people nowadays who say that the rules applied back in the day, but they should be updated nowadays? The Islamic rule laws that they had in the back don't apply for today?
No, they don't mean that.
Okay.
Those people are talking about something that they might call updated fiqh or modern.
Right.
They're not saying a law other than the law of Allah. They
Oh,
think
okay.
that today's atmosphere and the present situation of the day is much, much, much different from the past in such a way that the rules of the madhabs are basically not updated. And it's like the times have passed, the madhabs have left the madhabs behind, and there hasn't been enough research since then into the developments of the world so that new judgments that need to be applied would be applied.
But this is not speaking to that, then.
But it's not good thing though.
Okay.
Yeah. Those people are ignorant. If someone talks like that, he doesn't even understand fiqh in the first place. Because when you understand the fiqh, you will see actually the fiqh is so abstract that it covers everything. What the Prophet came with, alayhi salatu wassalam, wasn't just for Arabs, it wasn't just for people of old times. Those rules really were so broad, so abstract, that until today, it's very unlikely that you'll even find a rule that the technology of today doesn't fall under, without them having that technology. For example, the scholars spoke about someone setting up a trap to kill an animal. And that when this trap falls upon the animal and kills the animal, yani it was set to kill the animal basically while the person is not there, then this is not valid. So doesn't that apply to what they do today? It does. So then somebody's going to tell you, no, we need new rules now because look, we got all these machines. The scholars never even talked about these automatic machines. That's because they don't even know. That's why they're saying that. They think they need updated fiqh. They never even learned the old fiqh. Or I'll give you another example. Someone would say, no, when you're driving in the car or in the airplane, you can pray sitting down. They didn't have these cars and airplanes back in the day, but they did have animals, and didn't they used to sit on their animals and ride and pray while they were riding? Yeah. So now our animals are basically vehicles. So same thing. We need to update the fiqh. So say, no, it's not the same thing. They already talked about this. How did they talk about it? There was no cars or airplanes because they had boats and they had compartments on the backs of animals. And the scholars made the difference between riding on the back of an animal and riding in a compartment, which is basically a cockpit, which is just like sitting in your car. So they talked about it already. But you never learned the old fiqh so that you would know that it's still applicable. Yeah. So what does that tell you? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is really the messenger of Allah. He really came with laws for everywhere in the world until the end of time. His laws are applicable anywhere in the universe until the end of time. Sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wasallam. So here we just read this one, to wail, which means loudly eulogizing the deceased and enumerating their good qualities, such as to say, wa kahfa, oh my cave, because you use a cave to seek refuge or seek protection or shelter. Wa jabalah, oh my mountain, because the mountain is firm. So that one where you're mountain, that one is like your firm support. Or yeah, sanadi, oh my reliance. And for your information here, this wa, what's this wa? La. This wa is like yeah. That means it's a calling particle. You use yeah to call. So you say yeah fulan. But Arabic has a number of calling particles. And one of them is when you're doing a type of calling that's called nadib. That means whining. This is a whining. So this is a calling that has the meaning of whining. So it's like saying, "Oh man!" Ah. So you're whining. So there's a particle in Arabic that has the meaning of calling and whining, and it's wah, and it's so appropriate too, isn't it? Yes, very. What do they call that? There's a word for that in English. When the word sounds like its meaning, onomatopoeia. Wa jabala. He said astute. So there. So that's a type of calling there. Or to lament, i.e., to scream voluntarily. That's where the sin is. Voluntarily. Meaning you have the ability to control yourself in a way that reflects panic and impatience upon the death of a person. The author says, to utter words that encourage one to do what is prohibited. Watch conjunctions in formal writing here. To utter words that encourage someone to do what is prohibited, such as saying to another, hit Zaid! Exclamation point. Or kill Zaid unrightfully. or to utter words that discourage one from doing one's obligation, such as saying to another, "Do not pray right now. Instead, make up the prayer at home after the prayer time has expired." Yani, to say, don't pray now, you can make it up later. Discouraging him from fulfilling an obligation. Here, where somebody's going to fall into this sin, encouraging someone to do what's prohibited. You're going to fall into this sin when there's a sin that you can't do without somebody else. And, yani, basically, he's a cohort. Then you're going to fall into that sin. To utter any words which defame, dispraise, or dispute the truth of the religion of Islam, such as saying the blasphemous statement, "Learning the matters of the religion makes the person complicated." It's like saying, when someone learns the religious knowledge, he acquires bad qualities. To utter words which defame any prophet, such as some people's claim that Prophet Yusuf had a firm intention to fornicate. To utter words defaming these scholars, meaning all of them, without exception, such as what some say without any restrictions or limitations, the scholars have made the religion complicated. To utter words which defame the book of God, such as belying what was mentioned in the book of God. Belying means contradicting. So you want to be careful there. But what's intended here? What's obviously intended here? What's obviously intended here is something that's clear. To utter words which defame the book of God, such as belying what was mentioned in it, belying what's mentioned in the Quran. Yeah, like for example, he knows that the Quran confirms something, so then he denies it. That's what I mean. He knows the Quran confirms something and he denies it. Or he knows that the Quran denies something and he confirms it. Or to utter words which defame any matter widely known to be among the matters of the religion of Allah, such as the prayer, zakah, adhan, ablution, and what is similar. But maybe all these can use small letters here. So that's all clear, inshallah. Then the author said, to play the flute. That's a sin of the tongue. And that means the pipe. So flute is kind of a pipe. And al-mizmar, that's what came in the hadith. Al-mizmar, which is being translated here as the flute or a pipe. This talk will come back, inshallah ta'ala, with the sins of the ears. To refrain from commanding the obligatory or from forbidding the unlawful without an excuse. To refrain from commanding the obligatory, like commanding someone to perform his prayer on time, or even to make it up. Or from forbidding the unlawful, like telling a person to stop gossiping. So refraining from that while able, yani without an excuse. I.e., if one is able to do so without having any fear that he will be inflicted with physical harm or that his money will be taken from him or the like. Yani he thinks there's a benefit to it. He thinks there's a benefit in such commanding and forbidding. But you need to consider it though, so that you don't fall short. This issue of bidding the good and forbidding the evil, it is something that requires wisdom. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده. Any one of you who saw something objectionable, that means haram, then let him change it with his hand. Maybe sometimes we say, let him stop it. So very literally, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ, let him alter it. Let him change it, بِيَدِهِ, with his hand. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. So with his hand means, let him force that change. Let him be compelling. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If unable, then with his tongue. Yani he speaks against it. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if unable, then with his heart. That means he must hate it. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. That's the weakest of faith. That's the lowest level. Hating it in the heart. But you can't jump right to hating it in the heart only. Sometimes you have to stop it with your hand because you're able to, or stop it with your tongue because you're able to. You're going to use your wisdom. Sometimes you're going to stop it with your tongue, though you could have stopped it with your hand, and then it's going to be a better outcome. Or it could be you're going to stop it with your hand, although you could stop it with your tongue, and it's going to be a better outcome. But you want to consider the benefit of your bidding the good and forbidding the evil, so that you get a good outcome, not no outcome or worse outcome. Not no outcome nor worse outcome. Yani, no outcome means there's no difference. In this case, you're not obligated to say anything or do anything. Meaning, if that's what you believe, it's enough for you to think that for you to say something would be pointless. Yani, to really think that. I'm not talking about being a coward or being lazy. Being honest with yourself. That if you could, you would. If you could stop this, you will stop it. So then you look into it. And you're not going to do anything if it results in something worse. And sometimes these things take some experience. Take the example of a zealous young Muslim who taught a youngster like himself. So that youngster also became a Muslim. And then on the same day that person just became a Muslim, that first zealous one told him, don't eat this. It's forbidden for you. And then that new one, then it never spoke to him again. Now, he didn't know that's going to happen, probably. He didn't know that's how the person would react. But if he had some kind of experience or wisdom or heads up, for example, somebody had told him, be mindful when you're dealing with a new person, then maybe he could have thought about it more. In this case, what was it? All he knew that this is haram. And this is a new Muslim here. This has to stop. Sometimes you're going to be silent in the face of that haram for another benefit, like to teach that person, so you don't push the person away. But some people, they use that as an excuse. I don't want to push anybody away. And really, it's a cowardice or a laziness. Allah knows all about us, though. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, it will come out. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. On that day, the secrets of the heart shall be harnessed. Subhanallah. So, on the other hand, if one believes that censoring the wrongdoer, whether by physical or verbal means, will lead to a more severe prohibition, then they are not allowed to do so. Yani, then he is not allowed to do so. Okay, that's clear, inshallah. Like, what's an example that you don't think that there would be a benefit? Like, you're on public transportation or you're in an airplane. And then you said, oh, all of you pubescent women who are not slave women, cover your heads. So who's going to listen to you? The author says to withhold the obligatory knowledge that one is personally required to teach from the person who requests it. So why this is in parentheses? As if it's not in the Arabic. It shouldn't be in parentheses. Let's see. Let me pull up the Arabic real quick. وكتم العلم الواجب عليك عينا تعليمه. So, and hiding the obligatory knowledge with the presence of the seeker of that knowledge. Hiding the obligatory knowledge with the presence of the seeker. That's the sin. Hiding the obligatory knowledge, yani obligatory on you personally to teach. So it's right there. It doesn't need parentheses. With the presence of the seeker of that knowledge. So let's see what the English says. To withhold the obligatory knowledge. So this parentheses doesn't need to be there. Just like all the other spots here. To withhold the obligatory knowledge that one is personally required to teach from the one who requests it. Okay. So that translation catches the meaning. From the one who requests it. So the Arabic is, if you translate it very literally, would say with the existence of, or with the presence of its seeker. Withholding the obligatory knowledge with the presence of who's seeking it. That means while there's someone asking you for it. So the obligatory knowledge, what is that? It's very important for you to know what it is. Al-ilm al-wajib. That's a class of knowledge. It's an amount of knowledge. The obligatory knowledge is an amount of knowledge that takes from a few fields. Obligatory knowledge includes creed, basic creed. So that's one field, the aqidah, basic creed. And obligatory knowledge includes some fiqh, prayer and purification and fasting. And if you have money, then zakat. And if you're able to make the trip, then hajj. And if you need to do dealings, then you need to learn at least basic rulings of dealings or whatever applies to you. And if you want to get married or divorced, then you have to learn about marriage and divorce before you do it. And of course, the obligations of the husband and the obligations of the wife. And what we are involved in now, the sins. That's the obligatory knowledge. And as they say, in a nutshell. And some obligatory knowledge is even more specific. It's called immediate knowledge. Immediate knowledge. Sometimes a person needs very immediate knowledge. You're not going to give them all the obligatory knowledge. And when we say obligatory knowledge here, this means personal obligatory knowledge. And it could include the communal obligation. It could include the communal obligation. Communally obligatory knowledge. But I'm now describing to you the personal obligatory knowledge, not communally obligatory knowledge. Anything that's not personally obligatory knowledge is communally obligatory knowledge. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the personal obligatory knowledge due to the urgency of dealing with an individual. And some of the personal obligatory knowledge is even more specific. It's called ilmul hal, the immediate knowledge, or urgent knowledge. The urgent knowledge. That's going to be also basics of creed. That's going to be, for example, purification and prayer before even going into zakat and fasting and hajj. You have this new Muslim here. You're not going to teach him about zakat and fasting and hajj on the first day. He has to learn his creed, correct creed, and he has to learn how to make purification and prayer. And it is also very urgent to learn about the sins, because it's going to leave you and go out into the world again after you taught him. Him here means him or her. This person is going to go back into the world again. So they're going to sin if they don't, if Allah doesn't protect them. And likely if they don't learn what the sins are, they're going to fall into some or others, even unknowingly. Still going to be a sin even if you don't know. That's where you're going to be deluded to think if you don't know you're committing a sin, you're not sinful. Why do you think the people will be as if they are ambushed on Judgment Day? They're going to find Book of Deeds loaded with haram. Loaded. Haram that he forgot all about. Even when he stole candy bar when he was 13 years old from the gas station, he's going to find this haram there. Subhanallah. So to withhold the obligatory knowledge that one is personally required to teach, that means you have that knowledge and you have to give it to the one who's asking you. You don't have an excuse to delay him, deny him. Then you have to teach this person. And sometimes some people fall short in this issue. Subhanallah, if somebody comes to you seeking the obligatory knowledge, like someone said to you, can you teach me how to make wudu? That's obligatory knowledge right there. Can you teach me this thing or that thing? That's obligatory. And you're able to teach that person properly. Because you learn, not because you read books. Because you learn from a teacher what you're teaching, from a proper teacher. Then you're obligated to, unless you can pass that person to someone else in a way that they're not going to miss their obligation. So sometimes that means what? That means you got to stop doing what you're doing. Now someone just came to you and asked you for something that's more important than what you're interested in right now. You're obligated then to stop and then teach this person. And similarly, there's something else here since I'm here. Sometimes someone wants you to talk to a person so that that person would become a Muslim. And that person is not asking you himself. Rather, someone else is saying to you, hey, I have this person here. Why don't you come talk to this person so they can become Muslim? You might sometimes don't feel like it. If we're going to just say honest words. Maybe you don't feel like it. So think twice there. And sacrifice what you are doing, especially if you can teach people well and you can make people understand, then correct your intention and probably do it, inshallah ta'ala. He says, so there's personally obligated and communal, and personally obligated upon person themselves, then comes the immediate knowledge. Well, if I would put them in a sequence for you, then I'd say there's the immediate knowledge, or if you want, the urgent knowledge, ilmul hal. Like if someone just became new Muslim, or even if he wasn't a new Muslim, but he was so ignorant, and now he talked to you, and you touched his heart, and now he wants to learn, just like you learned. Then you're going to teach him the immediate knowledge. At first, why? Just so he can at least be functional in a way he's not having no belief or wrong belief, and that he can pray and make wudu and ghusl and istinja. This person just became Muslim. If it were me and there was time and everything, I'm going to teach him the belief and teach him in a very easy way, belief, and try to show him some things about blasphemy so he can understand what blasphemy is. Don't have to give him a whole list, 20 examples. It's too much information. Try to make him understand what's blasphemy. He doesn't, I can't tell him every example, every case now, but I can give him ideas so he can avoid blasphemy, inshallah. And teach him wudu and ghusl and istinja, and teach him how to pray, and show him the prayer times. If I can do that much, then I'll do that much. and then let him go. If I could keep him, and this is what, yani, up until here, then I'll do that much. If he could take more, I'll give him some of his sins too, so that when he leaves, he can, for example, go out, then lower his gaze, for example, and hold his tongue and like this. But if I can't get all that in one day, then I'll have to give him that other stuff another time. So that's immediate knowledge. Now, obligatory knowledge is broader, like all of the topics in the Summary of Obligatory Knowledge. So that is the creed and purification and prayers, and add to that zakat and fasting and hajj. But don't forget that when you're talking about obligatory knowledge, there's some things that's not going to be obligatory on you because they don't pertain to you. It's still going to be found in the book of obligatory knowledge. It's still going to be classified as, yani, in broad terms, not for you, but in broad terms, classified as obligatory knowledge, but might not pertain to you because you don't have money. So then you don't have to learn about the zakat. Or you're not getting married. So then you don't have to learn about marriage. So you're not sinful because you didn't learn about that yet. Now then there's communally obligatory knowledge. Some of those things you didn't learn because they didn't apply to you on a personal level. You might say, well, let me learn it anyway to fulfill the communal obligation at least. It's not obligatory on me, but somebody has to know. Let me learn all about the zakat and the hajj. Somebody has to know, even if I don't have money. And let me learn about also Arabic language. And let me learn about the tafsir of the Quran. And also let me learn the hadiths of the Prophet. But those things come after you learn the obligatory knowledge. If you want proper religious education, you have to put it in order. And you need to put the obligatory knowledge ahead of other things. If you put other things ahead of the obligatory knowledge, then yani, you might not be successful. So when you learn fiqh, so fiqh doesn't mean obligatory knowledge. When you learn fiqh, some of it's going to be obligatory knowledge. If you learn Abu Shuja, it has more than the obligatory knowledge in there. It has obligatory knowledge in there because it's going to teach you about wudu and ghusl and istinja and prayer times, etc. All that's obligatory. But it has more than that too, because it also talks about slaves or being a judge or other things too. And there's even an amount of tajweed, Quranic recitation, or Quranic phonetics, if you want, that's personally obligatory, which is learning Al-Fatiha and reciting it properly. Properly here means validly, reciting it validly. Means you might have not perfect Fatiha. You might have imperfections in your recitation possibly, and it's still valid. And without sin too, I mean. Because some recitations are better than others, yani. So one person's recitation is going to be better, more perfect, yani, more excellent. Another person's less. Still, as long as it's valid though. So, to withhold the obligatory knowledge that one is personally required to teach. Maybe they put this in parentheses here because of the preposition from, because it looks like required to teach from the one who requests it. So put parentheses here so to make it clear that the word from goes back to withholding. The word from here doesn't go back to teaching. To withhold the obligatory knowledge from the one who requests it when one is personally required to teach it. So then maybe if you want to get rid of the parentheses here and not cause confusion, just take this part in the middle and put it at the end. And just slightly change the words too. To withhold the obligatory knowledge from the one who requests it when one is personally required to teach it, for example. You said the sentence is just before that. Let me see. To refrain from commanding the obligatory or from forbidding the unlawful without an excuse. I.e., if one is able to do so without having any fear that he will be inflicted with physical harm or that his money will be taken from him or the like. Okay, I think that's clear. On the other hand, if one believes that censoring the wrongdoer, whether by physical or verbal means, will lead to a more severe prohibition, or will not benefit, or does not benefit, yani, even less than leads to more severe, yani, it says, then they are not allowed. Okay, I didn't finish the sentence. Yeah, if it's going to lead to something more severe, then he's not allowed to forbid this evil. If it's going to lead to something more severe. If he believes it's not going to even benefit, then he's just not obligated. If he thinks there's no benefit, he's not obligated. If he thinks it will turn out worse, then it's not permissible to forbid this evil. To laugh at a Muslim when one passes gas, yani when he passes gas. This use of one like this never sits well with me because it seems to me to mean someone other than the one just mentioned. To laugh at a Muslim when he passes gas, or to laugh at a Muslim to degrade him. So laughing at a Muslim when he passes gas, that's when you are able to contain yourself. If you're able to contain yourself and you laugh at him for that, that's haram. So what do some brothers do? Then they take that as justification to pass gas in front of anyone with no shame. So I never learned that's one of the sins, but it makes other people comfortable when you don't do that. That's what happens sometimes when somebody believes in the rules. Say, oh, it's haram to laugh at the Muslim when he passes gas. All right, very good. They'll just right there in front of you, even move his leg and look you in your eye. You can't laugh at him. MashaAllah. So, or to laugh at a Muslim to degrade him because he is of a lesser social status than him, or the like. Yes, that's clear. To withhold testimony without an excuse after being summoned to testify. To withhold testimony without an excuse after being summoned to testify. Yes, after being subpoenaed. After being summoned to testify means after being subpoenaed by the Muslim judge, then you can't withhold the testimony without an excuse. To neglect returning the salam when it is obligatory on one to return it. Yes. It is an obligation to return the salam when an accountable Muslim salutes a specific accountable Muslim of the same sex. So that means an accountable male salams an accountable male, an accountable female salams an accountable female, Muslims, and not innovators also. Not innovators. But if the innovator didn't reach the level of blasphemy, you can return his salam. Talk about the obligation here. If he's kafir, you cannot return his salam. That's strong saying. Innovator or any other kind of kafir. Yani, innovator here means an Islamic heretic. Islamic doesn't mean necessarily Muslim. An Islamic heretic, Islamic means affiliated with Islam. And an Islamic heretic who's a kafir, or kafir who's not even Islamic, not affiliated with Islam. It's not permissible to return their salam. That's a strong saying, not consensus, strong saying, according to what we learned. And while I'm here, what about returning the salam of an apostate? This one comes up every now and then, question. So the rule is, if someone is an apostate, he's a kafir. You know he's a kafir, whether he knew or he didn't know. You knew he's an apostate who thinks he's a Muslim, though, not a regular, not an original kafir, not a un-Islamic kafir, someone who's affiliated with Islam. But he's a kafir actually, and you know it. And if you say to him, Assalamu alaikum, this encourages him in his belief about himself that he's a Muslim. Or if you said, Wa alaikum assalam, this encourages him in that way. Or if you gave him a prayer carpet, this encourages him in his belief about himself that he's a Muslim. Or you gave him a date at Maghrib time in Ramadan, and this encourages him in his belief about himself that he's a Muslim. And you know he's a kafir, yani. And you realize that you're doing that is encouraging him in such, yani, his belief about himself that he's a Muslim. Not that you forgot, or you're absent-minded, or you had no idea at all. No. Like, for example, you're a coward who's too afraid to tell the person that he committed apostasy and that you can't help him out in this way. And so instead of doing that, instead of letting him know that actually you don't believe that he's a Muslim because of some apostasy that he committed, you just don't say anything. And then when he says salam to you, you say wa alaikum salam. And when he comes around, you might say assalamu alaikum. You might not say assalamu alaikum though. But when you say assalamu alaikum, you say wa alaikum assalam. And then he says, hey, hand me the prayer carpet. And then you just hand it to him, etc. So that's blasphemy.
Shaykh, I'm really sorry. Would you be able to repeat that scenario again, please?
Yes. There's a question here though, real quick. You said strong saying to an innovator as well. I don't know about that. But you can not return the salam of the major sinner. We'll have to review the rule there, because innovator is a major sinner. So if you told him he's a blasphemer and then you handed him the carpet, that means you're not. So it's not the handing him the carpet that's the blasphemy. So good question. That's why I was saying like how I was saying. You're encouraging him in his conviction about himself. That's the blasphemy. It's not the handing him the carpet per se, or giving him the date per se, or saying salam per se. So if that issue is missing, which is encouraging him about his conviction about himself that he's a Muslim, if that's not there, then there's no blasphemy here necessarily. Maybe possibly from some other way, but I'm not going to try to think of one. So is that clear? And also now what I just said, sister, you just asked me to repeat. Does what I just said now answer for you, or you need me to repeat still, which is fine?
It's clear. Barakallahu feekum.
Amin wa feekum. So it's important for you to be able to distinguish those two cases. That's where sometimes when this question comes up, that's where some people are not clear. Like, he forgot that the person committed apostasy. And then he did something. And then he remembered. And then he says, oh no, did I commit blasphemy? There's no blasphemy here. So to neglect returning the salam when it is obligatory on one to return it. It is an obligation to return the salam when an accountable Muslim salutes a specific accountable Muslim of the same sex. So by Muslim, we are excluding a non-Muslim. It's not obligatory to return the salam, and strong saying that is haram. Specific, by saying specific, we are excluding a group. Because when you send a salam to a whole group, then only one person in that group has to return the salam. And this would be what? A communal obligation on that group. One amongst them has to return the salam, and then the obligation is fulfilled. Even if the one who gave the salam to the group said, Assalamu alaikum, everybody, still it's only obligatory on one person to return the salam. Like if he says, Assalamu alaikum, on every single individual amongst you one by one, it's still only going to be obligatory on one person out of the group to return the salam. And by accountable, we are excluding an insane person or a child. So the insane person or the child gives you salam. It's not obligatory to return it. And of the same sex, then excludes different genders. Male with female or female with male of eligibility also. Eligibility, that's in reference to marriage. Eligibility, that's in reference to marriage. When they are eligible, then it's not obligatory to return the salam. From the man to the woman or from the woman to the man, either way. Does the innovation of the Wahhabis reach the level of apostasy? Is some of it, yes. Such as the anthropomorphism, likening Allah to the creations. Also, believing that the nation at large are misguided and upon shirk and grave worship. Believing that the nation at large is upon shirk, that's kufr, that's blasphemy. And don't forget, shirk. No. And don't forget, just so to be clear with your own words, the difference between blasphemy and apostasy. Blasphemy is broader. Apostasy is blasphemy committed by a Muslim. So he got out of Islam by this blasphemy. So that person's an apostate. Blasphemy is broader. So a blasphemer, a present blasphemer, could commit blasphemy, might commit blasphemy, and then she's going to add blasphemy to his previously existing blasphemy. When the Muslim, a person who's a Muslim, he by definition doesn't have any blasphemy. That's what it means to be a Muslim. To be devoid of the blasphemy. Yani, hakaza. If there's no blasphemy, it means you're a Muslim. So when he commits a blasphemy, it's going to be his blasphemy that starts him into blasphemy, then that's called apostasy. But they have other deviances also that we're not necessarily going to call them kafir for, like if they said every innovation is bad. Then we're going to correct them here and say that's not true. You have misunderstanding of the hadith. You said, when is it obligatory upon everyone who received the salam to answer back? It's not obligatory on everyone in a group to return the salam. Only one person. That's a communal obligation. That's why I gave you the example. Even if he said salam on every individual amongst you one by one, yani, you can't get more explicit than that. It won't be obligatory on every single person to return the salam. Only one person has to. You said, when we are given salam from a stranger, should we assume they are Muslims and return their salam? Yeah, that's fine. Yes. You can believe that person's a Muslim and return his salam. And if you didn't believe he's a Muslim, you don't have to return his salam. Because it's not obligatory to believe he's a Muslim, yani, unless something that makes it obligatory happens. Like he says the shahada in your face. If he went up to you and said, excuse me, miss, no one is God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Assalamu alaikum. So then you're going to say for sure, wa alaikum assalam. Yani, if that's a woman. Since you're a lady. But maybe you might not believe that person's a Muslim. Like, you're walking down the street and you see some lady, she looks like a dyke, and she has a handkerchief tied around her head, and she looks weird, and she says to you, "Assalamu alaikum." You might think, I don't know about this lady here. You might, Yani. You might still believe she's Muslim. That all what I said doesn't mean she's not a Muslimah, but I'm just giving you a scenario where you might doubt. Some people, they make fun of the Muslim, and when they see him, he's a kafir. Sometimes a kafir sees a Muslim, and he would say, salami and bacon. So he's belittling that Muslim in his face. Salami and bacon, how are you? You said what you said about eligible. Yeah, I'm using the word eligible for ajnabi. Yani, someone you could marry. Eligible means someone you could marry. So when that's a male to eligible female or female to eligible male, then it's not obligatory to return salam. You're welcome. The author says it is prohibited for the person engaged in Hajj or Umrah to kiss, such as a husband or wife, lustfully. So why it says that such as a husband or wife, we'll see. We'll look in the Arabic, inshallah. Lustfully. Similarly, it is prohibited to kiss lustfully while fasting an obligatory fast. Whether one were fasting Ramadan or fasting to fulfill a vow, or as an expiation. Yani, there's different reasons you might be obligated to fast. Obligatory fast, it covers Ramadan fasting and covers vow fasting and covers expiation fasting, like if you committed homicide or something else, you might be obligated to fast. So during obligatory fast, it is prohibited to kiss lustfully. So by saying lustfully, we're excluding a kiss that's not lustful kiss. Like, as I heard one of our teachers say before, a kiss of support. Say a peck on the cheek, for example. If one fears ejaculation because of this kiss, yani kissing lustfully while in an obligatory fast or while engaged in Hajj or Umrah, that's haram. I just want to look at the Arabic real quick, see why they did something. It says here, أي للمحرم بالحج والعمرة إذا كانت القبلة بشهوة صائم. What am I looking for actually? It says such as a husband and wife. So here's Arabic. And وتحرم القبلة للحاج والمعتمر. And forbidden is a kiss for a hajj or a mu'tamir, yani a pilgrim or a visitor to the house. Meaning the one who's in the state of ihram for hajj or umrah, if the kiss were with desire. So it doesn't say anything about husband and wife. So they squeeze that in there for something. Maybe for wholesomeness. Maybe for some amount of wholesomeness. They put that in there, such as a husband and wife. And then the last one, to kiss those whom one is not permitted to kiss, like a marriageable woman. That's a sin of the tongue. Because the tongue is involved in the kiss. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Allah knows best. Right on time, we're done. Do you have any question I can answer for you? If a Muslim kills a kafir, do they have to fast? Well, all I know, that's for a believer, for killing a believer. He would have to free a slave. And if he can't free a slave, then he would have to fast. Yeah, I mentioned the word subpoenaed. Subpoenaed. No, that's not the way to spell it. It has a funny spelling. Who can spell subpoenaed? Yani, subpoena itself ends with an A. Subpoena. The subpoena is the basically being served to appear in court, for example. Is there another spelling? I don't think spelled like that. I think there's an O in there or something. Question. So if the person We're not aware that giving a prayer mat to an apostate does not encourage him in this belief. Does he not blaspheme? He's not aware that it does not encourage him in that belief. So if that's what you meant to ask me, how would it not, though? Without that person knowing how that Muslim feels about him or believes about him. Because, for example, anytime if a Muslim gave me a prayer carpet in my own hearts, because I think it's because he believes I'm a Muslim. I believe I'm a Muslim, and he's doing that because he believes I'm a Muslim. So what do you say about playing unlawful instruments through a speaker? If the enchanting effect still in that sound, then it's haram. If the enchanting effect is still in the sound coming out of the speaker, then it's haram. Yeah, that's one right there. Subpoena. Thank you. So then what I said, I think you're going to replace the A and put ed. Subpoenaed, past tense verb. Question: if Wahhabi gives me salams, do I have to return them? So you know that he's a deviant. If you know he's deviant that didn't commit kufr, a deviant but he didn't commit kufr, then would I know that you're not obligated to return it? What I've learned that you're not obligated to return it. But you can, because he's a Muslim, he didn't reach the level of kufr, you can. And so let's say, for example, someone just affiliates himself. He introduces himself and says, yeah, I'm a Salafi, bro, what's up? So that's not enough to call him a kafir. So if he gives me a salam after he introduced himself to me as a Salafi, I'll still return his salam. That's not enough to call him a kafir. Amin wa fiq. So what if someone told you that they are Wahhabi? Same thing, like what I just said now. Like if he said to me, I'm a Salafi. So same thing. If he said, I'm a Wahhabi, which they usually don't say, that's still itself not enough to deem him as a kafir, as an individual. On an individual level, you cannot just deem him as a kafir because he affiliated himself. Oh, if you heard they were Wahhabi, that's still itself not enough to deem him as a kafir. If someone said to you, I heard he's a Wahhabi, that's not enough to deem him as a kafir. Even if you want to be on alert from him, you don't have to deem him as you're not going to deem him as a kafir just from that. Any other question?
Shaykh, right, very quickly. So if it's the case that a person, just to confirm, if it's the case that a person doubts another person's belief, it's possible to just ignore this doubt and give the person salam, yes?
Yeah, because here the option is deem him as a kafir for a doubt, or deem him as a Muslim and think the best of him. So maybe the easier one there is deem him as a Muslim and think the best of him. Not deem him as a kafir because of doubt. And here, though, I'm talking about somebody who's presenting himself as a Muslim. I'm not talking about just any stranger on the street. Because sometimes there's things that make you think person's a Muslim, like he gives you a salam, or he's wearing Muslim clothes, or like something like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Or you saw him praying, for example. Even if he doesn't have any Muslim clothes on, you saw him praying. Or maybe you saw him carrying some dhikr beads, but all his clothes look like just normal civilian clothes. So there might be reason that you'd think he's a Muslim. You said if they openly propagate the belief that Allah is in a place, that's blasphemy. So then there's no salam for them.
Sheikh Raed, can you repeat, please, what the sister asked and what you replied, just to memorize?
Sister, can you repeat what you asked?
I asked about doubt because I think a while ago I had a doubt about something that a person may have said because of whom they affiliate themselves with. And that led me to believe that they might not entirely have the right belief, but it was just a doubt because they didn't actively say anything in front of me. Although I did doubt that they might have said something to somebody else. So based off of that, I had a doubt with regards to what their belief was and what my position with them would be.
Yeah,
so I
so
was
in this
wondering if I
case,
could. Yeah.
in this case, then, yani, you don't deem the person as a kafir because it's not clear blasphemy for you, especially if you were deeming him as a Muslim before. Yani, especially if you were deeming him as a Muslim before, then if you don't have clear blasphemy, don't deem him as a kafir. Even if you're doubting, that means don't deem him as a kafir because it's not sure for you. You're saying, what did he say? That was crazy. I'm not sure how to take it though, so don't deem him as a kafir yet.
Great, thank you. Barakallahu feekum.
Amin wa fikum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك